You're listening to The Business of Glamping and Unique Holiday Rentals, Episode 7, and have I got a treat for you today. This is where we love to talk about tips, tricks, and inspirations for anyone hosting guests in unique structures. And today, my guest is going to talk about how he managed to generate $850,000 worth of PR without the help of a media agency. So let's get started. Glamping and unique holiday rentals are surging in popularity with the growing desire of customers to book holidays that deliver an experience. They are also the new business of choice for those wanting to improve their work-life balance. So how do you build a strong business like this that gives you the life you need and a great investment? I'm Sarah Riley, and I want to share what I've discovered after being immersed in this industry for over 20 years to inspire you to find out more about what's going on. Welcome, this is The Business of Glamping and Unique Holiday Rentals. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today. As I said in my introduction, I have a treat for you. Have you ever wondered how the media works, what they're looking for, and how you can get engaged in it with your business? Because surely that's just going to bring so many benefits, right? Think about the publicity. Think about how many potential guests could hear about your business if you were featured in the right media at the right time. So my guest worked hard to get media coverage for their business when they first launched. But they managed to get coverage in 30 different countries, 4 primetime TV spots. They were featured in BuzzFeed, and they got the stamp of approval of a multitude of different media outlets. All in all, totaling $850,000 of coverage without the help of a media agency. Now, how in the world did they manage to achieve that? Well, I have Sunny here today, who's going to share with you everything they did and the steps they took. If you enjoy this, please leave a rating and review on the podcast, and let's head on over to that interview now. I think that everything that you have to share today is going to really help people, because just to explain a little bit, I met you at the Glamping Summit, and you were there talking about how you had managed to jump ahead of the curve in terms of gaining some traction on your media coverage, and I'll let you explain all of that. But I mean, these things take an awful lot of time, and when you launched your business, you were able to introduce a strategy that allowed you to jump ahead of the crowd, jump ahead of the queue. But before we get into that, firstly, I wanted to get you to tell me who you are, where you are, and what your business is.
Sure. Thank you for that. So my name's Sunny Reback, and I am one of the co-founders with my girlfriend and life partner, Mai, of Bubble Tent Australia. So we have bubble tents 3 hours northwest of Sydney, overlooking a amazing place called Capity Valley, which is the widest canyon in the world. It beats the Grand Canyon by a whole kilometre in width. But the Grand Canyon is much, much longer and much, much deeper, and much, much more famous in Australia even than Capity Valley itself. So it's a bit of an undiscovered gem, which is really amazing, because I think if it was as popular as the Grand Canyon, we probably wouldn't be here.
So you're in that part of Australia. So why did you choose bubble tents? What was it specifically that attracted you about the bubble tent?
Yeah, so to answer that question properly, I probably do have to step back a couple of paces just to give a little bit more context, but the structure just it was kind of, the whole idea was bred out of an itch. Like most entrepreneurial journeys, that how they begin in the startup scene is usually through somebody experiencing a frustration, and then they go, somebody should do something about it. And then they go, that somebody ultimately is going to be me, because, I feel like I've got the answer to it. And only naive people would ever think that. And because they're naive, they don't know what they're getting themselves into. And so they begin it. And then a lot of, I guess, that baggage, of why things can't be done is thrown out the window through that naivety. So for us, it basically, the story began on a fateful trip to our neighbouring New Zealand. And Mayu and I went to just a motorhome trip around New Zealand, because I always wanted to do that, and she always wanted to go to a place called Lake Tekapo, which is famous for stargazing, because she watched a documentary when she was a 10-year-old girl, and it was always just implanted in her head. And so the trade-off was that she was going to rough it with me in a motorhome. Thankfully, we had an amazing motorhome, so she didn't have to rough it, and it wasn't really a trade-off. And I was going to just let her build this whole itinerary around the optimal time to go and stargaze. And so Mayu went full science nerd on this quest. And so she was like looking at the perfect time to go in the year, when it was most likely to be, to have calm weather, that it was going to be friendly. Pretty much like factoring in everything, including precipitation levels of that period of year. Wow. And so we eventually got to Lake Tekapo. And Mayu couldn't have timed it better, because this whole experience of this stargazing tour at Mount John Observatory was just unlike anything that I've experienced in my life before. And we basically it was around a time of a new moon. There was no wind, which is incredibly unusual for the area, and there was no cloud. And to top it all off, there was a meteor shower on top of it as well. So, to say that it was a life-changing experience is an incredible understatement, because it effectively kicked off this whole journey of ours. Yeah. And so after this stargazing tour, we were just on an absolute high, and we got back to our motorhome, and we were going, well, we're on a holiday right now. We don't want this to finish. It would be awesome if we could just continue sleeping under the stars. And Lake Tekapo is actually one of the few regions in the world that is famous for its stargazing. So it actually holds a gold accreditation from the Dark Sky Reserve, it being one of only 3 places around the world. There's actually one in Wales, I believe, so for your local listeners, which is pretty amazing, considering the density of Europe in particular. So anyway, we started Googling for accommodation where we could sleep under the stars in Lake Tekapo, and we couldn't find anything. And we thought it was a little bit odd, given that it was centered around astrotourism, but you couldn't fulfill this, desire that you would have, which we thought was just a given, but lo and behold, no one was providing it. When we got back to Australia, we wanted to replicate this experience because it was so freaking amazing. And we just wanted to sleep under the stars in comfort, where we didn't have to brave the spiders or the snakes or the inclement weather in the outback. And we couldn't find anything in Australia. And then we started to look for options around the world. And we found a couple of experiences which that did provide stargazing as one of the main attractions, but it wasn't quite what we had in mind. And then when we came across bubble tents, just purely from looking on Pinterest, we knew that was the kind of structure that we wanted to experience it in. And then it pretty much became a question of like, do we actually go overseas, do it? But, given the fact that most of them were in France and none of them really kind of vetted our appetite in terms of where they were, we were endeavoring to just buy one for ourselves to sleep under the stars, even just as a hobby. And then when we started to make inquiries, we found out that they were commercial grade tents. They weren't really something that you just buy for your backyard because they were prohibitively expensive for that. And then it was very much a bit of a crossroads for us. Well, do we, treat this as a hobby, which we can't afford, or do we actually just pull the trigger on it and see if it would work as a business? And then we decided to turn it into a business. And, we were hoping that we've got this childhood fascination, or well, Mai did, and now I've got this adult childhood fascination with it as well. And we effectively just pulled the trigger on it. And that's how we came to be glamping vendors of bubble tents.
That's amazing. And I love that it all came from a life-changing experience in New Zealand. But some of our listeners won't have actually seen a bubble tent or don't understand what it is. Can you describe what it is and how it works?
Sure. So a bubble tent, easiest way to explain it is they kind of look like Mars pods in a way. So when they are slightly overpressurized structures, and ours are completely see-through. There is a sanitary sphere, which is also the bathroom, that isn't see-through, and a tunnel that isn't see-through. But effectively at night, you literally feel like you're sleeping out in the open, except that you're completely protected against the weather, and you're completely comfortable. And to top it all off, just because of the sphere shape of the bubble, the acoustics in there are something else as well. So we've curated a particular playlist that add to the experience, and so when you're there, it's a bit without sounding a little bit corny about it, but it is a otherworldly experience if you haven't experienced something like that. So it's pretty awesome. Like, I mean, Mayu and I have probably spent 11 or 12 nights in there now in the 3 different tents that we've got, like just to know how guests are experiencing it. And I have to say, like, every single time we go in there, the first reaction that we have after all this time is still wow. So it's that kind of an experience, with that is just pretty unique and pretty amazing.
That's such a great tip, what you're saying there as well. It's something I recommend so many times to clients, is to actually stay in your guest space to understand how they're going to experience it and what's right about it and what's wrong about it and what you can add to it to add additional benefit, which you've done with the music and creating a different kind of guest experience. And so that's a really great tip for anyone listening in.
100%. I mean, there's a famous Southwest Airlines executive who effectively I think it was I won't try to butcher his name, but effectively he was known for flying, spending a lot of time flying his own planes, flying in the back, just so simply he could figure out what the experience was like for his clients. And he turned the airline around simply by being able to make it more efficient and adding some of these what we take as simple and expected experiences, and really leading the industry. So I don't think you could do it any other way, but really understanding your product inside out and always trying to look at it from a fresh perspective.
Absolutely, because it's really hard sometimes to get yourself into the shoes of your guests of every stage of your business, but specifically when they're actually staying with you, and something that you might think is amazing, they may think is a little bit off. And so to experience all of that and understand how you can enhance it is just a great tip. And definitely
Definitely.
recommend everyone does that.
Yep.
But
100%.
we met at the summit, and so it's your first time at the summit, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so what did you get out of it? How was that for you? Because you did an amazing talk, which I was in, and that's the reason that we're now talking, and very beneficial. So tell me, is there anything you specifically got from the summit yourself?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, and ditto to you as well. Your talk was definitely one of the highlights, and I learned a great deal about Instagramming and influencers. At first, because I was talking about media, and you were talking about like how to effectively get PR through or bookings through influencers. I felt there was going to be potentially a lot of crossover, but it was actually really great to see your angle on it, and how the case studies that you were employing, that was really eye-opening for me. So yes, it is my first glamping summit, and I think the biggest takeaway for me was that I think the industry is definitely on the upswing. And it is a very exciting time to be doing what we're doing. And also it was really great just to hear how given that we're already operating the business, how other glampreneurs, for lack of a better word, how they're operating, and just basically how they're solving problems, and seeing how the folks in the US are doing it, and how evolved the industries in the UK, and the various different structures that people are making great use of. So it was really interesting from that perspective as well. So with one of the things that I thought was really interesting, which I kind of get a kick out of, is some contradicting statements, and because I always think that there is that's really great, because it just goes to show that there are different ways and different perspectives of solving problems, and Wi-Fi, which was a bit of a contentious issue. I recall somebody mentioning that if you have Wi-Fi in your glamping at your glamping site, that guests are 40% more likely to book it. And then there was a panel of a few glamping providers where they said that they were actually doing a questionnaire around it, and that 100% of the responses were in favor of not having Wi-Fi. So they enjoyed the fact that they were pretty much forced to just connect with their significant other or their family, and they didn't have that option. So I kind of like that, it just goes to show you that I think the philosophy that we have as glampreneurs, and that we embody the experience so much, and it's okay to follow that and create a unique experience that you think is going to be appealing to others, and not everyone is going to share that same enthusiasm, but I just felt that was a really nice, strong, powerful message, of just being able to follow your, I guess, the experience that you're wanting to create.
Absolutely. It's quite interesting that from people I've spoken to, that was actually one of the topics that people have mentioned so much that's actually sat with them the most, which is that whole Wi-Fi, no Wi-Fi debate, and how we can encourage people to switch off, but also to do that from the point of view of we need to help people to switch off, because technology is becoming quite addictive, and we need to kind of make it easier for people to make those decisions, and we can't force them. And to come at it from the guest perspective, because there are also those cases, such as myself, such as maybe yourself, that when you go away, you can't actually switch off because you're still working, because you're self-employed. And, not everyone can have someone taking over what you do when you go away from the office, but it's to manage that. And so it's really interesting debate, and it's actually becoming stronger and stronger. But there was also a questionnaire that was sent out in Europe to individuals who visited a campsite saying, what facilities do you find the best, most beneficial to you for your holiday? And having Wi-Fi was featured there. So people do appreciate having the Wi-Fi. And so, those strategies that people are including into their packages to help people switch off is quite an interesting way of doing it. But so that was a conversation that I was very interested in hearing as well. But getting back to you and what you shared at the summit, so take us through how you were able to generate the level of epic media coverage that you did, because this was really epic. Tell us a little bit about what you managed to achieve and how you managed to achieve it.
Yeah, look, so basically the talk was about how without the aid of a PR agency, we were able to generate, in a very conservative estimate, at least $850,000 worth of PR, and how we did it ourselves. And so the last count, we were covered in at least 30 different countries. We had 4 primetime TV spots and numerous online publications and videos like BuzzFeed and Yahoo that did little segments on us, which absolutely was a pivotal moment for us in terms of taking us from not being able to give away nights, literally, through various different competitions that we were running, same media assets, to basically, I guess, getting that stamp of approval or credibility from these publications, which really moved the needle. And it just went to show how powerful PR can be when it goes right.
So how did you manage what were the steps that you took? How did you start to do that?
Well, again, I mean, necessity is the mother of all invention, isn't it? Basically, we, through the aid of a consultant that we hired early on in the process, he was good enough to put us in touch with one of his former glamping clients, and who in turn was excellent in giving a bit of time to us and just answering a lot of our novice questions and patiently just fielding it all. And towards the end of the conversation, I asked him, what they did for marketing. And he basically said, their strategy was getting a PR agency to invite targeted influencers and publications and offer them a stay for in exchange of a write-up. And he said that basically 40 of them took them up on the offer, and within a week, they all published their articles. And that worked so well for them that they haven't had to market since. And they were 5 years into their business. So I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. That is a really cool strategy that we can employ as well. And to top it all off, I had a friend that was working at a PR agency, and they actually had an influencer arm at that time. And so I thought, okay, cool, this is going to be, easy enough. Things are finally kind of aligned. And little did I know, when I met up with my friend and I said, hey, I've got this marketing strategy. I heard about it. It seems really cool. I know you work in a PR agency. We've got a little bit of money that we can throw at it. We've compiled our own list even. We've got a template that, it would seem a lot more credible, given that we're no one. If there could be somebody from your agency that could send this on our behalf. And she patiently and lovingly listened, and I could tell there was a bit of hesitation, and so I offered more money. I said, well, maybe, we can offer you like $2,000 if that would help. And she basically said, well, the budgets that the agency works with tend to be a little bit bigger than that, even for the smallest of the campaigns. And I asked, well, how much is a small campaign? And she basically said it was in the vicinity of $100,000 for a 6-week campaign for something, that along the lines of like what we wish to do. And needless to say, we didn't have that money. And to top it all off, she said, well, I no longer work at the agency as well. Like, I could have helped you out otherwise, but I'm moving overseas next week. So I just basically went, okay, well, we're kind of left without any other options really. So may as well just try to do it myself. I've got the list. I had a couple of different resources that I remember reading that might assist with that. And so basically I just went, well, which is going to be the first publication that I'm going to target? I gave myself basically a deadline of one new publication a day for the next 30 days. And I figured, well, if nobody wants to pick up on it, that might actually be the marketplace saying, well, hang on a minute, maybe this should have remained a hobby in the first place. And so I remember that there was a publication which was relatively small in Australia called AWOL. And I do remember that they actually covered bubble tents in the past. And so I thought it would be a good idea to probably get in touch with them, since at least, they won't be going like, bubble what? So they'll be familiar with the idea of it, and, just invite them if they want to know more information about what we're doing, that we launched this product, and see if they'd be interested in either staying or covering us. And so compiled a little brief email that I shot through. And luckily, they responded within an hour, and they wanted to know more information. And so, not expecting that, we would effectively get a bite on the first cast of the fishing rod, we sort of scrambled, to put a press release together, and we were still editing some of our materials, some of our photos that we were going to be sending through. So we managed to, get all of that together in the next hour or so, because it's very important to act very quickly. Journalists are incredibly busy, and you need to make their life easier in order for this to work. And so we sent it through. And within about 90 minutes, they published the article and they shared it on their social media. And so we were able to track the response on social media. And to cut a long story short, we just started really trending on their page. And that was terrific, but we didn't get any bookings or any inquiries from that, and it's all well and good to have interest, but ultimately what really matters is being able to get heads in beds. So it was a good thing to have, but then again, we just needed to keep obviously persisting and try to generate more media interest. But given the fact that it was trending on this particular, on AWOL's Facebook page, I thought that I could leverage that, given the fact that it's doing so well, to try to get a bigger publication. And the next day, we reached out to a bigger publication called Broadsheet here in Australia. If you are a millennial from Australia, you'd be probably very familiar with it. And I sent them a brief email again, just letting them know who we were and what we were about, a couple of pictures, and also just letting them know how well we were doing on this particular page. And they got back in touch with us, like literally in the next 10 minutes, wanting to know more information. We sent them the press release, which we had now, and the additional material, and they published an article in the next hour as well. And basically, that day was when everything just changed. It was crazy. So we basically, within the space of about 48 hours, we booked out 8 months of inventory in that period. And that was all thanks to those two particular articles. We found out that we actually got picked up by various other publications, and it really moved the needle for us, and it's really garnered all of the additional interest that we've had elsewhere. So that's effectively what I was talking about at the Glamping Summit, like how we spend so much time designing our experience, thinking about it and doing all of those things. But ultimately, at least 50% of it, if not more, is the actual marketing and the PR aspect of it and how crucial it is. And then when it actually works, how incredibly well it can work.
Absolutely. And what you're saying there is great, because what you did is you leveraged your win. So you got a win and then you leveraged it to get another win. And you realized the essential parts, the elements that you had to have in place, such as your assets. And then you also now knowing what you know now, looking back, would you have started your marketing campaign a little bit earlier? What would you recommend to people listening that they should start doing their marketing if they're, you designed your experience and you were setting up your business? Would you have started slightly earlier?
I think it always. So I do think we started early. I'm not sure, if it's a clear what would be conventionally called marketing, but one of the things that we did, which was super crucial in hindsight, was we weren't married to our idea in the way that we just loved it and had rose-colored glasses on, where we basically went, everything about the experience is amazing. So when we were looking for the right location, when we found Capity Valley, we knew we loved it instantly, right? But when we were looking at properties, for example, we started to take pictures and started to show it to friends and also strangers, and we were gauging their reaction. And if we didn't get a wow from them, more often than not, we knew that it probably wasn't that great. So those kinds of experiences were part of the marketing as well. We were asking people if they ever heard of Capity Valley, and almost nobody had in Australia. And that was really puzzling for us as well. And it made us question whether it was the right area or not. But then when we showed them the photos, the reaction was unanimous. It was always a wow. So I think that definitely falls within I did touch upon in the speech about some of the resources that were really helpful, including the Lean Startup, which is pretty much gospel in the tech industry, and as a sort of controlling idea of what the book is about, it effectively talks about how through testing ideas early, through what Eric Ries calls a minimum viable product, how you can potentially save time and money finding out if there is a product market fit. And so we use a lot of these principles in terms of just figuring out, if this was going to be an interesting experience for other people than just us or potentially our friends. I mean, a lot of the times people go, oh, your friends are going to be really they don't want to hurt your feelings, they're going to tell you what you want to hear. Well, in our experience, friends have given the most brutal feedback, which has actually been really good because they've really helped us stress test the concept and help us out with that. So we did conduct marketing throughout the whole time, and we were always scouting articles of various different publications and how what the strategies were on Instagram in terms of what was trending, what videos were trending on the likes of some of these online publications such as BuzzFeed, etc. We knew that that was that these wanderlust experiences, traveling does incredibly well, and that it was on point. So I'd say we did the marketing. I'm not sure whether it falls under a conventional idea of marketing, but it was always a big part of what we were doing. And I would definitely encourage everybody to be thinking about it right from the get-go. But I think like part of the challenge with marketing a glamping site is that you effectively do need to have the experience pretty solidified so you can actually get those amazing photos that are going to create that hopeful wanderlust that is going to get people interested in coming. Having said that, we did when we. I'd say that we got to probably about 50% of the way there, even though we were ready to receive guests, and we very quickly found out that the experience was working in the way that we had it, but we were still getting feedback, which was the most crucial feedback, where we could add to the addition to the experience and just continue to improve it and refine it. So, which we're still doing to this day. We're 14 months into the business, and we're still adding and subtracting every day.
And I love that you're doing that, because there's never, it never ends really, that there's always a possibility of improving a business and refining it for the guest. And it should never be that people just stop and say, oh yeah, we're done now. That's the end of it. We don't need to think about how we might better tweak it some more. And so I love that you're doing that. That's brilliant. And you've given there some fantastic recommendations for others to follow, to try to achieve the same as you've achieved. And do you have any other recommendations that you can specifically think of that might help?
I think, I've got a couple of other resources that were really instrumental, looking back on how what worked for us. I'm not sure whether that would be relevant, but I think we read lots. Seth Godin has got some phenomenal, interesting marketing ideas and principles that really adhere to that idea of just be remarkable. Purple Cow is one of his seminal books that goes into it, and he basically says, like, if you are remarkable and worthy of that word of mouth, then that will do your marketing for you. And we've kind of found that to be absolutely true, that if you go to the extreme lengths to create an incredible experience, you will be rewarded for that. And one of the things that that worked really well for us was we effectively uprooted our whole entire life, to move to the country. We found a perfect spot for what we for this particular concept. It's not right for every concept, but it's perfect for our concept, for bubble tents. And we didn't compromise on that. I find that that word really has helped us tremendously in just being able to stretch ourselves. And when we do get a little bit lazy, like when you are tired and the last thing you feel like is doing marketing or doing additional building, we do have to, we're lucky that we've got each other and we can push each other just to not allow ourselves to get lazy or complacent. So I think just trusting your, that what you're providing is going to be interesting. It's a reflection of who you are, and just to be courageous in I guess honoring your taste and not being afraid to experiment was something that is really beneficial for us. And we're finding that a lot of the quirky things that we find interesting, guests are generally finding interesting. Some are confused by it, but it's enhancing the experience overall. So I think things like just being an uncompromising in terms of striving to provide the best experience, and really, I guess, being bold and brave enough to try out different ideas which you may not have seen elsewhere, and just go, well, why can't it be done? And to question those assumptions. And, what I was saying before about these naive entrepreneurs that dive headfirst into an industry that they know absolutely nothing about, usually they're the ones that actually find solutions that not many other people have questioned or embarked upon. So I think it is that was really encouraging for us, just to attempt bolder ideas.
And all of those things that you've mentioned there, particularly Seth Godin, I will put in the show notes. And I totally agree with you about Seth. He is a unique thinker, and he really helps you see things from a different perspective. And
yeah,
I totally love what he has to say. And I think this industry has so much to learn from people like him, thought leaders in the world, who can really bring some magic to what we're trying to achieve. And yeah, so I'll put all of that in the show notes for the listeners. And
excellent. I was actually going to say one more thing, and at the risk of sounding like an advert for for Inspired Camping and what you do, but I actually think, looking back on it now, it's so important to borrow other people's experience. And, that does extend to these kinds of books, but also to people that have been in the industry. Like, we did hire somebody early on, just because we were new to the industry. And I just knew from having, some moderately successful to failed businesses in the past, I just wanted to accelerate the journey. And it is really, really important, I find, and money so well spent, to approach somebody that kind of has seen it before, has been in the trenches, and has got their finger on the pulse. And I'll give you one particular example, where we saved so much time. Initially, when we started to get a little bit of traction, we had a lot of OTAs. So they are, I think that stands for online travel agents.
yeah.
And they were approaching us, right? And we were getting a reasonable amount of bookings, right? But they were approaching us, and I was like, well, it would be so amazing to have somebody to help us out. And they were, as they should, but obviously there is a commission that they would get paid, and it was between 15 to 30% all the way through there, right? And so, had I not had a consultant that I trusted and that I could bounce this idea off, I know exactly what I would have done. I would have gone down that pathway, right, and spent a lot of time trying to figure this thing out. And I wasn't quite sure, because I didn't have experience, whether it was the right pathway for us or not. But being able to speak to my consultant within 15 minutes, he gave me the pros and cons to it. And he said, well, basically, in your situation, if you've got a huge inventory that you're maybe struggling to sell, then of course, this would be a really beneficial thing. But if you had 60 rooms, you've got 3 tents and they're booking quite well right now, it's probably not the best pathway for you. So I think being able to have, a coach or somebody in your corner that can actually help you just chew over some of these things. I know, knowing myself and knowing what I've done in the past in different businesses, I think it's absolutely imperative just to have somebody in your corner, which will ultimately save you time and money, and speed up your journey.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And of course I would say that, but then but yeah, with the online travel agents, as you mentioned it, as you brought that up, I think it's a great strategy to have for some cases.
Yes.
And for others it doesn't work so well. And the costs are definitely something worth thinking through very, very carefully, because added to that 15 to 30% commission that they so often charge is the tax as well. So when you add the tax on too, then that's quite a significant chunk of every single booking that isn't going to the owner. And so, yeah, it's definitely worth having that as a consideration in a strategy. But I'm always suggesting an exit plan to kind of think about how that could be avoided or, certainly negotiated because the costs are so high. And that's great what you've said there about, borrow other people's experiences. And that's what so many other people have said to me in the past as well, is that there's no point in, starting from scratch when so many other people have done the hard work for you. So learn from those people, learn quickly, and jump ahead of the crowd, jump ahead of the competition, and make things happen really quickly. And couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, exactly.
And so in terms of everything that you've done, it's clear that you've used stories. You've used stories to really create some passion and desire in people to book with you. Did you use a particular strategy or any tips around creating your stories, or did you just let what you have demonstrate what you wanted to say?
I think yes, we did use stories in our press release. We used a story that I used with you guys of how we got inspired to set off on this journey in Lake Tekapo. So I think stories, we're humans. We love stories. We love movies. Without getting too philosophical about it, I think even religious beliefs are stories and anecdotes for what we, how we live our lives. And so I think it is an innate part of us, and it is something that we just understand. And so I think in terms of being able to generate this publicity, yes, we definitely have been very fortunate in just being able to utilize these stories that are interesting and that we've refined through being able to have a few attempts at it in various different publications and the TV shows that we've been on. So I think that's really terrific. But even I think I'll give you a specific anecdote, but story of how you communicate to guests. So because we've got bubble tents, we have a airlock tunnel where you've got to keep one door always closed at a time, because if you open both doors, right, the tent will start deflating. And so we frequently get, frantic phone calls from guests going like, "Oh my God, I've broken the bubble, what do I do?" And so all you would need to do is just close the doors, and then it would inflate back up again. But we, going through this whole sequence of explaining the steps can sometimes take a long time and get confusing, especially if there are language barriers. So what we've started to say was just pretend you're on Mars, and that is the tunnel, that is like your decompression chamber. And they get that. So it makes sense, they've seen enough movies just to be able to go like, okay, decompression chamber, the doors are closed and then you're able to move in. So I think storytelling can take many different forms and many different shapes and be effective in many different ways.
Absolutely. And I'm often telling the members of my courses that remember that facts tell and stories sell. So in terms of getting someone to really get engaged with what you want to do and what you're, showing them or giving them as an offer, tell the story. The stories work every time. And I love that, how you've just highlighted that in what you've said. So what's next for you? What's next for Bubble Tents Australia?
Well, I mean, we're just, again, we're continuing to refine the experience. I've just returned from, we're trying a really innovative shading solution. So we're in the process of figuring that out. So we're still very much in the trenches day to day. But we've been very lucky in having a few different opportunities presented to us. So we are looking at becoming a multi-site. And we're entertaining those options at the moment. But basically, we're just putting one foot in front of the other and just trying to, again, improve upon the experience from what we're learning. So those are our immediate plans. And then for later on, we would really love to just extend that experience to places around Australia and New Zealand as well, and possibly even overseas. But for now, just knowing that we are a young business, a small business, we're very focusing on the processes and really still perfecting the experience before we go, yes, we're very much at a point where we know how it works. There's very few things that are going to catch us by surprise, and that we can the experience is gone from great to even greater.
Each of those small steps does add up to an epic journey. So it is all about small steps, taking those small steps. And before you know it, you're looking back behind you at how far you've come, and you realize how far you've come. And you have to celebrate that, because what you've achieved is just astounding. From that tiny idea that you had in New Zealand, and it has now bloomed into this amazing business that's had such epic success. And yeah, you've done so well. And I hope people will find out, will learn from your experience, and will be able to take something of what you've done as inspiration to help them achieve what they want to. How can people find out more from you?
They can visit our website and check us out on www.bubbletent.australia. I'm not very active on social media personally myself, but through our business we are. And if there are ways that we can help, like we're always able to, we always love helping out. And part of what I wanted to do with the Glamping Summit was, given the fact that, I was helped by an amazing glamping operator who was kind enough to take that time, and he was so instrumental in terms of this particular strategy now that we're able to enact. It is about paying it forward as well. And I think, there are a lot of people that are on this exciting journey, and it is nice to be able to share some of that.
Absolutely. And I will put all of those links in the show notes over on Inspired Camping. So that's just inspiredcamping.com/007, as this is episode 7. That will take you straight to the notes. And thank you so much, Sunny. You have just given so many tips there. It's really
I hope it's of benefit.
Oh, absolutely of benefit, and really, really grateful for your time. And I can't wait to hopefully meet you again soon, maybe in Australia. Maybe I'll come down under to visit.
Fingers crossed. When you guys are cold, we're hot. So it's a perfect time to, change your scenery a bit.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you, Sunny. You take care.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Bye.
We rise by lifting others, and Sunny absolutely embraces that. If you enjoyed this and found it useful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Check out the show notes on inspiredcamping.com/007. And also, if you want to delve into more of the strategy behind getting media attention, check out my masterclass teaching you the secrets to attracting more guests and commission-free bookings on steroids. And you can also get involved in the conversation over on Facebook. Until then, take care. See you soon.